Welcome to Am I the Bleep?
Welcome to Am I the Bleep? It's a podcast where we, the Jonathans with a Z, because we're in
Yeah.
Canada,
Mhm.
Z, are going to coach people from the Am I the Asshole subreddit. They are going to post their Am I the Asshole stories and questions, and we're gonna answer that question, and then we're gonna coach them. And that's how it goes on this show. But sometimes we ask for coaching from our fellow Jonathans. And this time is very serious because Johnny, I have an announcement to make.
Do it.
We've talked about how on the show we have a council of Jonathans that we report to and we're a part of, and we obviously pay dues to
Yearly. Per annum.
year. Yeah, and obviously the time to renew is coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I have chosen to leave the Council of Jonathans.
Oh, come on.
No, yeah, I have.
Wait. Before you get into your feelings about this, I just want
Sure.
for our listeners just to make sure we're on the same page. Can you do a
Yeah.
quick recap, the highlights of who is on this Council of Jonathans? Because, and I know
Oh yeah.
this phrase comes up a lot in our work, but it is in fact both an honor and a privilege to be even like in the running to be on this council. So like recap who's on this, which Jonathans.
Well, of course, we have Jonathan Cena.
Of course.
He's
It's
not
like
one of the
he's never
founding
there
members.
though. It's like he's never, you
Yeah,
can't see him.
you can't really see him. We got Jonathan Groff,
Mhm.
famous television and Broadway star.
Jonathan Davis
You
from
got
Corn.
Sure, you got Jonathan Van Ness,
Mhm.
one of the Queer Eye gentlemen.
Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad.
You do have him, yeah. And I can't think of more. You know what? That actually leads me to why I'm leaving.
Okay, talk
I don't go
about
to
it.
the meetings. I don't go to the meetings.
That's true. You don't show
I don't.
up.
I haven't shown up, and you know what? And I think it's because the first time when I couldn't see Jonathan Cena there, I realized like, well, if Johnny C isn't gonna be there, why is Johnny R gonna go? And so
It's like
I
you're on the
think
same
that
level. You're both Jonathans.
we're both Jonathans at the end of the day,
Yeah.
and and you go to every single meeting, and obviously every single member of the council, and
Deeply.
I just don't think it's worth it anymore, and so I'm going to be a free agent, Jonathan,
Hmm.
from now on. I'll be available for Jonathan events, and of course, Jonathan inquiries. If there's ever an investigation into a Jonathan, I can be brought on to
course.
consult in order to give my expertise. And obviously, freelance Jonathan coaching.
Mhm.
That's something we
That's
always
a
offered the
must.
council. That was our role. Well, that was our role on the council, right?
Yeah.
Is to coach the other members. And I'm going to leave that to you now. I'm passing the torch. It's going to
So,
be a solo mission.
so tell me about like what this new post council life will look for you. How will it look like?
I'm probably going to have a lot more time for my writings. I write well, to be honest, it's mostly fan fiction about other podcasts. That's what I've been writing, and it helps me hone my craft.
Can you tell me a bit
Um,
about like one story you're writing right now?
so I wrote a fan fiction about what if Serial had had a satisfying ending. Uh, I wrote a fan fiction about what if Judge John Hodgman, who isn't a Jonathan, just a John, was
Different
a
council.
Jonathan. Yeah, exactly. The Council of Johns. What if he had secretly been a spy for us the entire time? Um, yeah, and those and I'll be able to post that on my live journal and have those go viral and find my success that way.
Hey, how are you feeling about the change? You feel good about it?
I feel good about it. And and I'm glad you're the first person I'm telling, even though obviously I'm telling all our listeners at the same time. But I'm glad you're the first person I'm telling because I know you're such a supportive person and friend and colleague. That I know I knew you were going to be someone who cared about my interest, but I know this is putting a lot of pressure on you to coach the rest of the Jonathans on your own.
Well, also, I feel like there will be a couple of Jonathans who will feel a little abandoned, specifically Jonathan Cena. I feel like
Mm,
he wants
mm.
to be seen, you know? And I feel like you've really helped him do that over the years.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing. We show up. As coaches, that's what we do. We show up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, five knuckle shuffle or not, five knuckle shuffle, five knuckle shuffle or not.
Five Knuckle
We
Shuckle is like a good
we
oyster bar name.
yeah, that's actually really good. Oh man.
Five Knuckle Shuckle. Exactly.
I think Shuckle's a Pokemon actually. So that might be copyright. Anyway, but that's all that personal news aside,
Yeah.
all that personal news aside, we have our first post of the day, and I don't want to hold back anymore. I'm just gonna go ahead and read it because
Do
we're
it.
here to coach, not talk about my personal decisions involving the council, but we'll see if the council's what the council has to say about my decision. We'll update the listeners as we can.
Well, you do have a month until
Okay.
auto renewal, so
Yeah, exactly. So I
yeah,
definitely have to cancel that. I'll probably remember to cancel that. Yeah, for
probably.
sure.
Yeah.
Probably. Am I the asshole for taking my sisters and their husbands to see Garth Brooks when my friends didn't pay? So I was lucky enough to snag 6 tickets to see Garth Brooks in Vegas. My friend and I had made plans to go as 3 couples, but I can't really afford to pay for 6 tickets. The concert is kind of expensive. I told my friend that I needed the money for the tickets before my credit card was due. They both promised they would get it to me. I reminded them a few times and they both, quote unquote, forgot. I called my sister and asked her if she knew anyone who might like to go. Said that her and my stepsister had been talking going. We decided to make it a family trip. They paid me immediately, and I transferred the tickets for each of them. Last week, one of my friends saw that I posted on Facebook about going with my sisters. She asked why I was going twice. I told her I wasn't. I needed to pay my credit card bill, so I sold 4 of the tickets. They went ballistic. I do not have any credit card debt as I pay my bill in full every month. They both assumed I would be okay just paying the minimum monthly payment like they do. They expected me to save them the tickets even though they didn't pay me. I told them both to check their texts and see where I had agreed to that. I sent them screenshots of where they both agreed to pay me before my bill was due. They are pissed because all the tickets left are either resale or very expensive floor seats. I am mad at them for trying to screw with my credit. They are mad at me because they had booked time off to go to the concert. Am I the asshole?
This is an
Ooh.
interesting one. So I'm gonna go ahead. I feel like earlier episodes of the show, I hem and I haw until I and talk for 10 minutes until I get to the answer. And now I want to get better at just giving the answer, sharing my thoughts, and seeing where you land on it. So I'm gonna say kind of the asshole. Not pretty much the asshole, not definitely the asshole, but not the asshole. And I think that's important. And the reason for this is there was a better way to communicate that this original poster, no underscore aioli 8006, that's the name of the original poster. First name no, last name aioli, middle name underscore. Um, to say like, hey, if you don't, like, credit's really important to me. I want to pay my credit card in full every month. And a week ahead of time, if you're not going to pay me back for the tickets, I'm going to have to sell them. By setting clear directions, people know what to expect, and then, they've made their choice. In this way, it sounds like that the conversation before was not so clear. Hey, like, can you pay me back, like, by text? And they both forget. And after you find out, like, they have a different way of understanding of how credit cards work compared to you. And by the way, like, I totally agree. If you're able to pay off your credit card, you don't want to be accruing interest every month. Like, that's not something you want to do. But yeah, I feel like this original poster did not communicate effectively what was going on, and what they needed to feel good. And then they just went and sold the tickets and left those friends. Like, they thought they were going to Garth Brooks that night, and suddenly, because of a misunderstanding, they're not going. But with that said, I do think original posters in the right. Like, if they're not going to pay like on your terms, move on. They're not actually being good friends to you. Like, they're all the asshole in this situation. But yeah, I do think you have to. There was a better way to communicate, and I can see from their side too why they went ballistic. Pew pew pew. Um, yeah, John, what do
Yeah,
you
I
think?
think I think I think I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I get, my first thing was gonna be not an asshole at all. I think the only thing that makes you an asshole in this situation is, when we take everything that was said in the story at face value, we miss the last the last window being like, these tickets will not be yours if I do not get the money by this time. Not because I don't like you, not because it's like I'm vindictive, but because I literally will not be able to afford to wait on you
Exactly.
any longer. You have no possible chance to get these tickets after this point. I need the money by then. If any of you are interested in going, now's the last opportunity by this time today. Why do you now that's when I say that, I ask myself, what do friends owe each other? What do friends owe each other? Because this is a nice thing that this person was doing, you know, giving the friends and their significant others the opportunity to do this. This is a rare opportunity, and I feel like we owe each other dibs as friends. We owe each other like first chance to get this kind of opportunity, get these tickets, get the seats, get the good place in line or whatever. But that comes with responsibilities, and if the friends don't meet those responsibilities and then begin to blame you for what they failed to do, that absolves you of a lot of being the asshole. Let's just say that. You probably need to revisit why you have friends that don't don't feel like they owe you anything, but there's a disconnect there, and I think you and I both see that, and that's why I agree with you. Yeah, I think kind of the asshole just for not giving that last minute, you know, that last minute. You have a deadline. These will not be your tickets otherwise, because clearly they didn't understand that part. But I think the whole credit card thing, I think is kind of extraneous. It's kind of extra. It doesn't explain why they were so cavalier about saying yes, we will get you the money, and then not getting you the money. Like, even if they think that you should be paying minimum on your credit card, they agreed to do something and then they didn't do it, and that's a failure on
Yeah,
them as friends.
and I think the credit card, I agree it's extraneous. I think that it just like what it helps illustrate is that original poster in their head. They're like, okay, I fire in my head because I always pay off my credit card, and they're not helping me to do what I must do to like feel good this month and survive this month. And in their head, they're like, oh, credit card, they can pay that whenever they want, and I'll get them the money when it's time. And we don't know like what either person's financial situation, but what was going on in original poster's head and what those friends were thinking were on two different planets of how to solve that problem. And I agree that last minute communication saying, hey, um, you know, I do need to get paid back for these tickets now. You have till tomorrow. If not, I am going to have to sell the tickets. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. It's okay to be firm with and directive with your friends, especially when there is that misstep going on. I feel like this was really cathartic for you after everything you've been through in the Council of Johns. I feel like you need I,
Because they all owe me money.
for going to see Garth Brooks. I feel like John Cena and Jonathan
Yeah,
Davis have
yeah,
have
yeah.
a Court Garth Brooks crossover episode would be incredible.
Yeah, they have a hankering for Garth. Who can blame them?
That's a different council though.
Yeah. Is Garth the one who Friends in Low Places? Is that him?
Oh God, I hope we have no
I can
fans
look
who.
it up if you don't know.
I hope
All
we
right,
have
write in.
no listeners who are really into
No, listeners
country
of the
music.
show, you absolutely write in. If that is Garth Brooks, I think he's a great singer, and he's very talented. And I'm not a big, I'm not big on country, but there is some country that just makes you feel things, and that's a good song.
Gotta know when to hold them, when to fold them, and when to do the
Nope, that's
next,
not Garth Brooks.
and
Okay,
when to do the next
not a good
post.
segue though, because it's unrelated to Garth.
All right, I'll.
No, there's one more question I wanted to ask you actually
Yeah, go
related
for
to
it. Go
this.
for it.
Do you think that the financial problems of today are going to put a lot of strain on friendships in this way? So I feel like when everything's going well and the economy is doing well and everyone's making lots of bank, questions like these don't pop up as much. And then, when we start heading into pseudo recessions or full blown recessions, people start to get a little bit testier with their money. Do we expect these kind of problems to pop up more often?
Yeah, totally. I um I feel like even recently, like going out to eat with friends and things like that, it's like hard to get people to go, but if you're like, oh yeah, like I'll get this round, I feel like that doesn't exist so much right now. It's more
Mm-hmm.
like you don't want to have the payback situations. Recently too, I've even gotten like I had a friend who went to a store and I'm like, hey, could you pick me up this thing? It's literally $5. They're like, oh, can you pay me back like immediately? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, like no problem.
Mm-hmm.
But like
Mm-hmm.
uh before COVID, we would have been like, oh yeah, $5 is $5, it's not a big deal. But now it is a
Yeah.
big deal. um so obviously, and like this is one of the stipulations for the council, is we always pay our debts
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
um
We actually sued over that particular ditty because
yeah, who do the
well, I won't
Lannisters think
mention
they
it on
are
the
anyway? No,
podcast,
no,
but
who do they think they are?
is what's no, what's that fool's name? Um J.R. Martin? R.R. Martin? No, it's R.R. Martin.
George
I'm
R.
thinking
R. Martin.
George R.R. Martin, not a
He's not a
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Different thing entirely. Not even a J. It's a G. It's
What was
and
J.R.R. Tolkien's
isn't that Lord of the Rings?
yeah, but what
But
was his first name?
I think
John, not a Jonathan.
I think it's really important too that George is the worst kind of like counsel because it's a deceptive first letter. You think the G is going to be Gorge, but it's George, and you're not a J. I'm sorry, it's a G. Stay in your lane.
I mean, when they had that split with the Jorge Council, that was so dramatic.
Well, that's a J.
That was
That's different. That's
yeah, that's true. Well, that's why the split happened because of the
yeah,
confusion.
yeah. It's rough
Do
out
you
there,
want to
guys.
do you want to read another post or do you want to start talking nonsense?
No, no. Well, I was going to, and then you didn't like my segue.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're right. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to support each other's segues. It was a great segue, even though it's not a Garth Brooks song. I like that it's still in the same genre.
Thank you. Thank you.
Genre with a G.
Yeah, yeah, we don't like that word.
Like
Okay.
like a George.
Like a George. Am I the asshole for not wanting my husband to eat lobster in our house? I, female 27, have a seafood allergy. Anything that comes from the sea will cause me to break out in hives, nauseated, and give me difficulty breathing. It never got to the point of being anaphylaxis reaction, but I do not want to risk it. My husband, 27-year-old male, loves seafood, specifically lobster. He will eat it when visiting his parents who live 4 hours away but never around me. His parents are coming to visit next week and are bringing lobster. My mother in law doesn't understand my allergy and thinks it's just a small rash. I just found out today. I told my husband absolutely not. He can go to our friend's house to eat it, but not here. He told me how he will eat in the living room and I can stay in the bedroom. I said this no, the smell is going to linger and I'll be nauseated for hours. He promised to clean up after the scrub and I said no, I don't want to risk it. We argued a bit more and this is where we are. He's usually really good about my allergy and always checks in with restaurants before going to see if they sell seafood. Will warn waiters about my allergy. This is completely out of character for him, so I'm wondering if I'm being the asshole here. Da, 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 da.
The love of a lobster versus the love of a
Your
wife.
wife? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Lobster.
mean, it's a
I
tale
barely
as
know
old as
her.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
That's terrible. Lobster. Yeah. Um, I think you're not the asshole in this situation. I don't have allergies, so when but I've accommodated allergies a lot in my life because
For
of
sure.
people I know, and not just you, like other people I know have had allergies, and I've been like, cool, you can't eat things or you'll get sick or you'll die. Those are very good reasons to not eat those things and or be around them. That was actually you were the first person I ever met who I learned being around certain allergens not only made you ill in the sense that you get a rash or anaphylactic, but you'll actually get nauseated by the smell of certain foods
For sure.
that you have bad reactions to. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I think anyone can relate to on just a non-allergenic level is that if you've ever been sick from a certain food, the idea of eating that food again makes you feel nauseous. So I'm sure almost, suffocating from eating a food would have, a similar effect. But if it's physiological, I don't know if that off the top of my head, if nausea is physiological as part of allergy. I don't think it is, but I think it's a very reasonable thing. If that you get sick from a food, you'll probably have a bad emotional reaction to it being around you. I think that makes a lot of sense. So all that to say that even if that weren't true, and this wife was just saying, I do not want to risk coming into contact with this allergen because it'll give me a rash, that is enough. The nausea thing is another reason not to do it, but that is enough. And that the husband is acting differently. I don't know. It speaks to me that the parents are involved, and that might change things for him in terms of he doesn't want to be rude to his mom and say no, don't bring lobster because of my wife. And I think that is a terrible mistake to make. I think that it's very challenging to be put up against your significant other and your parent, but your significant other here has such a good reason for not wanting this to happen, and it is your likely husband that is dictating how kind of laissez-faire and loosey-goosey the mom is being. about this allergy. You might have downplayed it a little bit too much or something like that. But anyway, no assumptions necessary. If we just take the facts of the story, don't do this. Don't do this to your wife. And wife, you can be gentler, maybe. Just be like, I understand that you don't think it's a big deal, and I understand that you generally go out of your way to make this comfortable for me, but this isn't like an optional thing. This is I need this, and I need you to do this, and there will be consequences if you don't do it. I will be very, very upset. I might feel very ill. You will feel terrible for having done that to me, I bet, because you seem to care about me. Don't do this. Just we'll eat something else. It's not that big a deal, you know.
Or as
Move on.
the original poster also gave other options. You can go to a friend's house, and then the husband was like, "No, no, no, we're gonna eat it in the living room, and you can just hang out in the bedroom." It's like, is that really a fair solution to this problem? Like, hey, we're gonna do what we want. You may feel sick after, but we're gonna isolate you while you do it because you have food allergies. That's a little ridiculous to me. Um, I'm wondering where else, like, the original poster and their husband, they have their own system. I'm wondering how many other times it's happened where when the parents come in, his parents come in, things get kiboshed like that. Like, for example, he's really good about the lobster normally and seafood, but suddenly parents come in and they're bringing his favorite food, and it's like, oh well, my parents are coming in, and that matters more. Like, that's more of a priority in their head, perhaps. I'm wondering where else that shows up. Um, in this case, I agree with you. It's not about being gentler as such, it's just giving more of a firm, like, hey, this is what I need to feel safe and good and healthy. And that nauseated feeling in those hives, it's not just a small rash, like, generally, it hurts. And especially if there's difficulty breathing, I'm pretty sure that is characterized as like an anaphylactic reaction of sorts. And that's dangerous stuff, as somebody who struggles with allergies. And it's like, it sounds so nerdy to say, like, oh, as someone who struggles with food allergies, like it's like my epitaph on my gravestone will be like, he took his final stand to a peanut. And that sounds so dumb because it's such a small thing, but it's like the greatest threat in my life, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, that and like the impending ethical collapse of society. But
Of
like those
course,
two things are pretty much like your enemies.
that's why we need you back on the council. But
So obviously this isn't the point of the the point of the show, but I'm thinking about it, and like there's type there's like hypersensitivity reactions that we call allergies, and type 1 is anaphylactic, like you're gonna die, your throat closes up, etc. But then there's this like type 4 reaction, which is usually like the hives, and it's your T cells activating, and like it's very uncomfortable. But the problem with that one isn't just that it's like it's not as deadly as type 1, but it lasts for so long. It takes forever to chill out.
yeah,
And it's like the same reaction you have to like poison ivy. It takes forever to go away, and it's itchy and it's annoying and it hurts, and you're right. And all that is great. I take back what I said. Don't be gentler, be firmer. Be like, hey,
yeah.
don't do this. This is the stupid thing that you're asking me to do. It's so unpleasant to have a reaction to this food, and you're bringing it into the place where I live. Stop it.
Yeah, and also I think
Stop it.
original posters saying, like, original poster could say, wow, your family's coming in, like, I want to have our food that I can eat all together at home. And original poster saying, hey, if you want lobster, you can go to your friend's house, but I'm not going to feel sick in my own home, which is perfectly reasonable. They are not the asshole at all. um, and this husband and their family is being totally unreasonable. Allergies suck, and it's like, it's not the same as a seasonal allergy to have a food reaction. And as you were saying, that in between, I've had literally reactions where it takes me like 2 or 3 days to feel good. It's terrible. Don't do that. If you want the lobster, go to your friend's house. like be a mensch. Be a mensch.
Be a mensch. Be cool. And you know what else would be cool?
Just do
Oh
it.
no.
Just do it.
I know, I think I had closed it accidentally.
Oh
That's not
no.
cool at all. That was the least cool thing I could have done. Oh, no, you sent two of the same oh yeah, you sent two of the same one.
No, I didn't.
You,
Here, one sec.
you,
Here, one sec. So close.
we'll let it in post.
Yeah, of course.
We'll fix it.
There we go.
Thanks. Okay. And you know what else would be cool?
What?
Reading another post. It's not
Nice.
my best one, I'll admit it.
It was good.
Am I the asshole for ruining my sister's family? And that's in quotes. My 20-year-old sister, my poster's 20 years old and female sister, who's 28, is, and I'll call her Vicky, and her now ex, who is 29 and a man, I'll call him Joe. We're together for 9 years, and they have 2 kids together. Last year, Vicky found out Joe had been cheating on her with a coworker. Oh my god. When Vicky discovered Joe was cheating, she was 8 months pregnant. Oh. And she took herself and her daughter halfway across the country to stay with our parents. A few months after this, Joe moved out to the same state and got his own place to try and keep the family together. My parents were very supportive of them trying to work things out for the sake of the children. Things seemed to be going well. Vicky and the kids would go stay with Joe on his days off. When I asked for advice from Vicky, I would always advise her with caution because I have and had no trust or respect for Joe after what he did. This was always met with anger from my sister, and I eventually gave up trying to reason with her. About 2 months ago, my boyfriend, who is 25, and I also moved to the state my family resides in, and I'm currently 6 months pregnant with my first child and wanted to be closer to my family. A week ago, my boyfriend and I went out to dinner and we saw Joe with another woman. I took photos and sent them to Vicky, telling her that I do not know what the context is. It definitely looked like a date. When Vicky confronted Joe, he was honest and told her she was a girl he'd met and taken interest in and that it was a date. Vicky was hurt and begged him to still continue trying to work things out with her, to which he agreed and supposedly cut off communication with the girl. Now, where I may be the asshole is a couple of days after this, Joe called me to apologize for what I saw and the position he put me in, and also asked me what I thought he should do. He was on speaker, and my boyfriend and I both had a conversation with him where we pretty much advised him that if he didn't truly want to be in a relationship with Vicky, then he needed to let her go. Okay. Joe said his reasoning for trying was for the kids' sake, and we told him that watching their parents go through this back and forth is going to hurt them more than help them in the end. That same night, Joe called Vicky and told her he didn't want to hurt her anymore and that he was not going to try a relationship with her, only his kids. I'm sure he told Vicky about our conversation because she's been blowing up my phone telling me I ruined her chance at happiness, that I destroyed her family. I should have kept my opinions to myself. My mother has also been sending me messages telling me that I'm a home wrecker and that I should have just let them work things out instead of ruining 2 innocent kids' lives and family. Am I the asshole?
In this case, we have somebody, original poster, who does not trust or like Joe at all. She's on Team Vicky. This is like very clear from face value of this story. We're on Team Vicky. They're trying to get it back together, and then here Joe is, after getting a place and trying to get the family back together, going on a date. Now, as a coach, as Joe's coach, I totally agree with what original poster did. Joe is not actually acting in line, like he doesn't want to be in that family. It seems like he keeps dating. He wants to move on, but was it the sister's place, the original poster's place, to have that conversation with Joe and say get out? In my opinion, the assholery, and this is going to be a gray area, I'm just going to say that now, the assholery potentially is pushing their values on to Vicky. What's interesting here is we don't know the religious background, the cultural background. Like, how important is it for this family that, and Vicky, specifically Vicky, that, no matter what, we stay together for the kids and that kind of thing. And it could be, the situation where Vicky and the family are that way, and original poster is like, no, like, we have to, like, do what's actually good for the family. And what's actually good for the family might be different things. So this could feel like an asshole thing in terms of like imposing your values and pushing things away. So I can see how the family feels like things got ruined. Now, do I think they're an asshole for giving what probably was good advice? I think kind of. It's certainly not altruistic, and it's certainly not on Vicky's team and doesn't align with what the sister wants. I think that's like not necessarily being, the best sister in the world. But I do think, as far as the original poster and Joe go, I do think they weren't an asshole. I think they actually did the right thing. So I'm a little, there's a word for this. I'm a little on the fence about where to go with it. I can see both sides pretty clearly. I'm gonna say kind of the asshole because it's not like it is the asshole to the family, and it's not the asshole to Joe. So I'm conflicted. That's the word. I'm conflicted. But I'd love to hear what you think, and let's hash it out.
So I think that in this scenario, the original poster is mostly the asshole.
Okay.
So, and I'll walk you through how I got there. You go to a restaurant with a friend. The friend asks you, "What do you think I should get?" You kind of have two options. You can say, "This is exactly what you should get. Like, I strongly think you should get this." Or you can say, "Well, what are you thinking about? What are you looking at?" And they give you some options, and they're just like, "Okay, well, like this is interesting. This one's interesting. This one's interesting. What do you think?" And then they come to a conclusion, and then they make their choice. In both cases, something got ordered. But in one case, when the food arrives and the person starts eating, and if they don't like the food, they'll say, strongly suggest, you basically told me to get this and I hated it. And this is your fault that I got this. I didn't have to listen to you, but you made it sound so certain that I should do this. The other way is that, well, we kind of came to this conclusion. I ended up choosing this. It wasn't so good, but like, what can you do? It wasn't as good as I hoped, but I chose it. So I'm willing to live with the consequences. The reason why, when you're giving advice, you don't want to be prescriptive. You don't want to say, do this, is because you will not be the one to pay the piper when the bill comes due. When you're giving advice, you are not the one who has to deal with
You've been
the
waiting for years to be
consequences
like,
of
when
your
the bill comes
advice.
due.
When the bill comes due, the juice must flow. Like, you cannot absolve yourself of the consequences of your advice when you give advice in a way that tells people what to do, as opposed to ask them what they're already thinking about and talk about the pros and cons the way you see what would happen. Like, to expand on the options is different from telling people which option to pick. And I think that you gotta be able to tell the difference, because especially in this scenario, you have such a big horse in this race, right? You're so committed to your sister not being hurt that you are willing to give this kind of directional imperative to Joe and say, "Hey, this is what you do," that you're not really thinking about, "Oh, well, what if he follows through with my advice? Then I am partially responsible for the ending of a relationship for another person, my sister."
That's big
and
stuff.
yeah, that's big stuff. Is your sister completely justified to be upset? No. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that you're a total asshole, that you've ruined. No. That's none of that. And the homewrecker nonsense, none of that. You're not a homewrecker, but you meddled and you manipulated. Maybe not intentionally, maybe not in a way that was malicious, but you manipulated. You tried to affect things in the way that you think they should be. And there's a sincere lack of humility that comes with doing that. I find that you cannot admit that maybe you don't know everything, and maybe the situation is complicated, and maybe there is room for you to say, I think you should do this, but I'm not I'm not you. I'm not going to be the one to have to deal with the consequences. So here's how we're going to do it. Talk to me. What are you thinking about doing already? Why were you going on dates? What were you thinking at the time? If you really want to get involved, which I don't always recommend, but if you are going to get involved in a positive way that helps be like a third person view on the situation and be like, okay, talk to me. Like, what are you thinking about? Where's this coming from? And if you can't do that, if you have to take a side and you're not going to be able to hold back from giving that kind of prescriptive advice, say nothing. Say nothing. You're allowed to say literally nothing. It doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a person who is, aware, self-aware of your limitations. If you cannot talk about this without taking a hard stance, keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. And if the person asked you and Joe asked you what you thought, you have to explain that, like, I can't give you advice on this. I care too much. I'm going to be so biased towards my sister here that I think you need to talk to someone who actually would be able to give you a unbiased perspective on this. That's why people go to therapy and get coaching, because it's that access to that. Anyway, that's why
I
I
really
think
like
you're
where you
mostly
went
the
with it,
asshole.
because I
Thank
think
you.
where I was going with it was I took it as like original poster sort of ascribing their values onto them, and then in that case, could be this way, could be that way. But you brought up a really interesting point, which is this is manipulative behavior. This is and what's really important about manipulation is that even when your intentions are good and you're trying to manipulate something positively, it's still manipulation. And it's always better to take a step back, be a third party if you're able to, and say, like, oh, hey Joe, set, like, like, what's happening is shitty, like, how are you feeling about it, if you want to. But also, you can tell Joe in that moment, because you don't trust him or like him, as you said. You can also just say, hey, like, I don't want to have this conversation because I am biased towards my sister. Like, you need to go figure your stuff out. And that's totally something that would have been infinitely more okay too. You, it is a meddling, like, you meddling kids, Scooby Dooby Doo, kind of problem. I agree with you. And in this case, I would agree it's mostly the asshole, because the and the only reason it's not definitely the asshole is because the intent is good, but it's still an asshole behavior. So,
Yeah, the
problem.
screwed up thing is that you could be right. Yeah, you could be totally right, but the way you went about it is bad. It's not good. It's not effective for building good relationships with the people in your lives. You're manipulating people into doing what you think is right, which is bad news. Bad news bears. What
Yeah.
happens when you're wrong? What happens if you're wrong? You have greatest intentions, you think you know everything, and then boom, you miss something important, or your values weren't where they needed to be in life in order to give solid guidance, and you just manipulated people into a bad situation, and then you're responsible for that. That has consequences. This has long-term consequences, especially in a family. So
Now, no, I
it's not
think it's
sustainable
important.
behavior.
Yeah, and I think it's important that, like, did you ruin the sister's family? No, it sounds like the truth is, like, there's a lot of facts if we take at face value, but I'm sure if we ask questions, we'd uncover a lot more stuff going on where this marriage
Yeah.
was likely on the way out. Like there's problems going on here. Um, there's infidelity. Even if like you just texted the picture and say, "Hey, Vicky, look what I saw," like that would have been totally fine, and it's gonna go in its own natural direction. Jumping in this way, um, it didn't help anyone. So like, did you ruin it? I mean, it was already probably on the way out. Did you do the right thing? Manipulation is manipulation. It is what it
Yeah,
is.
again, if someone were, you know, dipping buckets into the ocean and dropping water onto the Titanic, you wouldn't be like, oh, they sunk the Titanic. You'd be like, that person completely lost the plot towards the end and just decided to become um, a villain and make it worse for some reason. That is, you know, there's a
Yeah.
distinction. You're not a home wrecker. You're just not helping. You're doing the opposite of helping. So I think that's what you have. That's why you're not a complete asshole. You're not responsible for the end of this relationship. You're responsible for
Adding fuel
meddling
to the fire.
and adding fuel to the fire, and that's not helpful. It's
And
not helpful. But how can we be helpful?
yeah,
I'm making the
that's where I
segue.
was
How can
gonna
we
go.
be helpful?
Yeah,
No, it's
so
good. I'm glad we're on the same page. I just wanted
yeah,
to do a
so
segue.
what I want to do here is like for original poster, and it's important in all of these stories. We all do asshole things all the time, like everybody. Nobody is immune. Even on the Council of Jonathans, there's like a very specific like cleansing ceremony after you become the asshole, and
It involves sponges.
a lot of sponges.
I
But
love
what's really
sponges.
important here is that let's take a step back and go back to the relationship. What's important for you? And it sounds like a relationship with Vicky is really important for you. In this case, acknowledge we messed up. I don't feel good about how things went down. And just have a conversation with Vicky. You sure she'll be angry at first, but you can have the conversation, talk about it, and talk about where to move forward from there. We all make mistakes. Have the conversation, and you can make good steps forward. It doesn't have to end
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. I think that's actually the way to move forward, is to admit the mistake. Admit that you were maybe being a little too directional. Also acknowledge like things weren't looking so great anyway, and that are you did it. Just talk about the motivations, because clearly you care a lot about your sister. Talk about like, I care a lot about
Yeah.
you, and I manifested it in a very unhelpful way. I told Joe what to do, but what I should have done was this. But
Yeah.
I care. The reason I did it, the reason I made this mistake, was because watching you get hurt in this relationship hurt me, and I care so much about you, and I want to make this right. But know that watching you go through this with someone who isn't being um
Faithful.
faithful, thank you, someone who
Hmm.
you is so damaging to the people around you. And so I'm willing to back off, and I don't have to say anything about this for forever, but I also want to know how I can support you if you want me to support you again. And then
Love
it's
it.
and then it's in Vicky's court, like Vicky can choose to forgive you. She can say, no, you're dead to me. Like that's her prerogative. But you have to be willing to kind of come to the table and be like, this is how I fucked up. This wasn't the right thing to do. But the sentiment of why I did it stands. I care about you, and I don't want to see you keep on getting hurt by this relationship.
Yeah. Love it. Super simple. Like it's okay to be the asshole. It's not okay to be the asshole, but it's okay to acknowledge that you were an asshole and figure out steps to move forward with your people. And whether
Yeah.
that's with your sister, your friends, or with your very own coach in the journal that talks back, That's the way to go. And if you're interested in learning more, I can't tell you how to have another sister, but I can tell you how to join the Journal That Talks Back. And to do that, all you have to do is go to thejournalthattalksback.com, click book a call. That call is free. We will either match you with your very own coach if our service sounds like a good fit for you, or we'll help you find a service that makes more sense for you. That's the goal. We have a mental health directory that's growing and budding with lots of resources. We have brand new episodes of Am I the Bleep and all of the old episodes of Am I the Bleep as well. So you can check those out there, as well as on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer. And where else can they find us, John?
Did you say geezer?
Deezer with a D.
What's D?
I don't know, but it's a thing and it's not defunct yet.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we're also on Boardat.
Like very nice high five, like Borat.
No, not Borat. Boardat.
Okay, cool.
It was Boredat.
Okay, so I was close.
Yes, Matt. No, it's for U.S. college students
Very nice.
and us, apparently.
Very nice.
Boardat. Very nice. Hey, should we just end every episode with Borat impressions?
We could.
No, we'll end the episode with the thing that we ended with. Each time it's a quote for you to grow on and grow with, and it's not a Borat impression. And this week's quote is, "I am not afraid of assholes, for I am learning how to sail my ship."